hustle and bustle in Paisley, a busy industrial town in the west central belt of Scotland, but one with its own unique history. We have a world-famous abbey, world-famous poets, and world-famous industries. Lots to know and be proud of. No better way to find out about Paisley than to take a walk to Paisley Museum and Art Gallery. Here we find the museum and its staff celebrating the industry that keeps the local economy turning, as well as Paisley's plans for the future. There is so much to celebrate, from the ancient to the modern, and of course the bright future. There is engineering, fabrics, whiskey, thread, barrels for the whiskey, even more threads, and lots more besides. There's even a space-age sugar beet processing plant. All of these enterprises make up the permanent business of the Chamber of Commerce. The director of the museum, Cyril Rock, knows more than anyone what makes Paisley Paisley. He's delighted to point the interested student of local history in the proper direction. We begin at the beginning. The expansion of a tiny village begins with the arrival of a holy man. The only dim figure, little more than a shadow, that can be seen faintly through the mist of Paisley's early years, is Mirren, the Christian missionary, who became the town's patron saint. So this little place called Paisley becomes Paisley. In those days, travel would have been by boat up and down all of Strathclyde by way of the venerable River Cart. With the nearby River Clyde, the nearness of the cart makes Paisley an important place for trading and setting up workshops. Important trading places make for attractive targets for others who want that trade. Fast forward 500 years to the 11th century, and Somerled, Lord of the Isles, is busy landing his craft at Renfrew. At the Knock, a little hill about midway between Renfrew and Paisley, they found themselves faced by a body of resolute Scots, and a pitched battle was fought. These invaders were beaten back and sent home with their Lord of the Isles dead. This next proud chapter in our history, a chapter which affected the whole body of Scotland, is the chapter concerning William Wallace. Wallace is written of as the inventor of guerrilla warfare, and certainly his guerrilla tactics played a key part in the Scottish Wars of Independence. Wallace, a man of rank, born in the village of Elderslie near Paisley, was educated by the monks at Paisley Abbey. 2 years after Wallace was captured in 1305, then hung, drawn and quartered in Smithfield, London, Edward I decided to burn down Paisley Abbey in revenge. Later, it was rebuilt. Paisley was important because of the abbey and its geography. Robert the Bruce and his heirs had castles in nearby Renfrew, So the story takes an increasingly royal turn. Marjorie Bruce, the eldest daughter of Robert I of Scotland, was held in harsh captivity in England, then released. Pregnant while riding from Renfrew to Paisley to pray for a safe delivery of the child, she was thrown from the horse. There is a monument at the point where the horse stumbled and fell. Marjorie was speedily taken to Paisley Abbey. The monks of that time were the main holders of medical knowledge, and of course they prayed. Attempts to save her life failed. She was so severely injured by her fall that within a short space she died, but her child was saved by caesarean section, performed immediately after the breath left her body. This child, born either miraculously, medically, or fortuitously, goes on to become the founder of the Royal Stuart dynasty. Marjorie Bruce still lies within Paisley Abbey. Paisley Abbey and its monks were a powerful institution. It certainly looks a strong, powerful place. There are so many strange stories here, linking Scotland's royals to Paisley. James IV of Scotland was a king with a conscience. Rebels had declared him king and overthrown his father. James felt guilty. He wore a painful iron belt around his waist. He made pilgrimages to holy places. He finally applied to the Pope himself for forgiveness. In 1491, a papal bull, a mandatory instruction, was issued empowering the abbot of Jedburgh, the chancellor of the Archdiocese of Glasgow, and the powerful abbot of Paisley Abbey to hear the king's confession, grant absolution, and so to deliver his soul from the burden of its sin. By the 17th century, the town administrators are keeping records. Some of these are dark chapters in the Paisley history. Paisley burned witches to death, although none of the three men who condemned them were from Paisley. A horseshoe is set in the ground near where they were burned alive, at Milleston Cross. But the story is also linked to Paisley and thread making. The chief witness is a child of 11, Christian Shaw. She is said to have vomited coal and sharp pins. 8 persons were tried and condemned by the witch-finders. Some people said that Christian Shaw was lying and that she simply had taken a dislike to one poor woman. As a grown-up, Shaw travelled to Holland and learned new thread-making techniques that she brought back to her home. She is credited with beginning the local thread industry. Threads mean weavers. Weavers in Paisley were famous for their poetry. The family home of the famous weaver poet Robert Tannahill is just a short walk away from Milliston Cross. Tannahill was a contemporary of Robert Burns. Tannahill's nature poetry is among his most memorable. A sensitive poet, he suffered rejection by his publisher and his true love, finally drowning himself in the Candron Burn in Paisley. But in general, it looks as if Paisley's weavers were more successful, all thanks to the Paisley shawl and the genteel ladies of Victorian society. These ladies loved the pattern shawl. Paisley and the famous tadpole design on the pattern are now world famous. Weavers, climate and access to the New World's cotton by sea ensured that Paisley was the place for the new modern mills. J&P Coats is very famous. Fergusley Mills, said to be the largest of their kind in the world. J&P Coats started as a thread and fabrics dynasty when James Coats returned from the Napoleonic Wars. Although penniless, he went on to develop a strong intertwined cotton thread, which was the simple beginning for one of the great companies of the world. So much that is famous is easily spotted in any walk around Paisley. Robertson's Jam. A stirring story of homespun entrepreneurship and Victorian ingenuity. James Robertson was a grocer. He bought a load of sour Seville oranges from a destitute salesman. His angry but canny Paisley wife worked them into marmalade in her back kitchen in Causeyside Street. The rest is history. Two kings and our queen gave Robertson's Jam the seal of approval. So many different flavours. And marmalade as well. Brown and Paulson, famous maker of puddings, blancmange, jelly for the gilly pieces, as well as baby food. In 1854, Paisley's John Paulson invented edible starch made from maize. Originally with Mr. Brown, he provided starch for the Paisley textile industry before realising starch's potential as a food additive. And now, thanks to Paisley, corn flour is a staple in all sorts of food. Yum yum. Stoddart's carpets. Every modern cosy home should have one. The Roots Car Factory. Some people say it was the friendship between Harold Macmillan, the Prime Minister, and his Secretary of State for Scotland, John Macleay, that brought this modern car factory to Paisley. Macleay happened to live near Paisley. It brought with it high wages and a boost to the local economy. Local people were loyal to the quirky Hillman imp that rolled out of the factory gates. It was loved by many of its owners, who often kept a heavy toolbox or concrete block in the front boot to assist with the steering. A stroll down the high street and anyone can see these famous names displayed, along with much else. Including the famous Paisley bonnets. No female Paisley buddy would be seen in public without one. So much choice, but it's always hats off to the excellent results. And there's the splendid town clock. But oh, there's nothing worse than an overdue book. Thank you very much, Mr. Director. The book was great. So we are back, and back to the future. The dreams for the future have been set out, modern houses with new designs for the next generation. We can't walk to this one, but there are plenty of buses. Just outside the town is the Bonnie Wee Well, first written about by the poet Hugh MacDonald. While the well was written about by MacDonald, Tannahill the Weaver poet wrote about the magnificent Glenifer Braes that overlook Paisley. The wild flowers o' summer were spread us a bonny, the mavis sang sweet frae the green birken tree. Time for a Paisley seeker to look down and contemplate the town, the hills, the town itself, the enterprise, the people, and the culture. Yes, Paisley has much going for it, now and in the future.